humanity enters the 21st century, we have become more acutely aware of the detrimental effects that pollution and climate change are having on the environment. These negative impacts have long-reaching fingers. No place is safe or immune to the destruction. In northern ecosystems of the world, these factors are proving to be a formidable foe for flora and fauna alike. The adverse effects on indigenous cultures is increasing at a rapid pace. These negative changes include chemical hazards, disease and health issues, erosion of the land, ice danger and depletion, impacts to wildlife, sea life, and plant life, as well as changes to weather and storm patterns. The northern environments are seeing some of the most rapid changes due to warming air and sea temperatures. In the north, a 1 to 3 degree change in temperature will have a magnified effect on fish, wildlife, and habitats. In turn, this will harshly affect indigenous peoples in circumpolar regions. Deteriorating ice conditions, reduction of marine life, and unstable tundra conditions may well be the precursor to what the future holds for the Earth and its biosphere. The melting of the ice caps will equate to an economic and social cost of losing functionality of all coastal communities, which is practically incalculable. In the Arctic, the implications of negative impacts of climate change are numerous. This is impacting migration, nesting, and hunting rituals for both humans and animals. The seasonal temperature extremes are changing, which affect the fauna growth timeline, migration patterns, hunting patterns, and resources. The sea ice is thinner, forms later, and melts sooner in the season. This is leading to a host of other issues that affect both human and all other Arctic land and sea life. Arctic animals are losing their nesting and denning capabilities both on land as well as on ice and snow. They're also losing their ability to hunt and rest using the ice pack. This probability of global extinction of an Arctic mammal species has not been estimated, but appears to be growing with the increasing pace of habitat and ecosystem change. The increase in air temperature is contributing to the permafrost layer becoming shallower and melting earlier. More than 50% of the world's wetlands are in the subarctic and Arctic areas of the Earth. These wetlands have historically been an integral part of carbon storage, as well as a participant in the Earth's water cycle. As the tundra thaws, there is an increase in carbon dioxide and methane that is being released back into the atmosphere, thus helping to increase the temperature of the Earth. It is this circular pattern of cause and effect that is contributing to the acceleration of the change of the Arctic's climate, ecology, biodiversity, as well as cultural activities and traditions of its people. NASA is monitoring the thaw of the tundra in an effort to predict how fast the Earth will warm. They theorize that if the tundra gets warmer and drier, it will likely release mostly carbon dioxide. Although they predict if the region gets warmer and wetter, more methane will be released instead of carbon dioxide. There is a concern as to which gas might be released in higher quantity. Methane gas doesn't linger in the atmosphere for as long as carbon dioxide does, but it is better at trapping energy. As a greenhouse gas, methane is 22 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. Neither of these options is good, but the release of large amounts of methane into the atmosphere would exponentially hasten the warming of our planet and the detrimental effects to indigenous people. Also of concern is the instability of the landmass itself. Thermal karst failures occur when permafrost thaws and the groundwater under the surface becomes unstable and sinks and drops. This phenomenon is increasing at an alarming rate in northern Alaska. Adding to the land instability has been the change of weather patterns. There's an increase in stronger and more frequent storms, with storm surges causing rising water levels to erode landmass. Homes and infrastructure are being destroyed. There are many communities that have or will soon have to abandon their traditional lands because of the rising water and land erosion. Eventually, some traditional homelands will disappear completely under the ocean. Climate change is also affecting weather patterns, such as the frequency of lightning strikes. The changing weather patterns are leading to unpredictability in many areas, such as freezing rain and icing events, thaw freeze cycles in winter, timing of snow melt, and timing of snow onset, taiga and tundra wildfire frequency. Temperatures are also contributing to a northern migration of plants, insects, and animals to areas that they had not previously inhabited. Additionally, the Arctic's unique ecosystem leaves it susceptible to a process known as biomagnification. This occurs when contaminants accumulate in organisms at the bottom of the food web. The concentrations of these substances magnify as they move from one trophic level to the next. The length of the food chain, or how many species a contaminant passes through before being consumed by humans, intensifies the concentration of the poison. Arctic carnivorous mammals, especially marine species like seals and whales, are at the top of the food web and can be exposed to high levels of these contaminants. Knowing the impact of the environmental contaminants on traditional resources of indigenous peoples is important. Northern environments are the precursor to the changes taking place on the earth as a whole. The, the contaminants being found are notably organochlorines, mercury, and other heavy metals. High mercury levels have already been found throughout the Arctic and especially high in the livers of ring seals, most likely from cement and metal production. This exposure issue is a direct result of increased introduction of these substances to the Arctic food web. Indigenous peoples tend toward consuming locally and seasonally available traditional food. Their intake of animal food is far greater than their intake of plant food. Thus, the fact that these traditional food sources are being found to have more and more contaminants is disturbing. Another fact to consider is that most indigenous cultures, the people use less than 50 different plants or animals in their diets. If all of these resources contain the same components of contaminants, this would increase their negative impact on the consumers substantially. Within the past 20 years, there has been an increase in food consumption advisories in regard to traditional foods. Many times these are helpful in letting people know the need to limit a particular food resource, although the advisories tend to be based on a yearly consumption rate. One of the problems of foods are seasonal, and as such are consumed at a higher rate during that seasonal time. This variable has not been studied and its implications is not known. At this time, the use of advisories are based on tolerable intakes of certain contaminants and this seems to be the governing body's go-to solution to help protect indigenous communities. The increasing reliance on advisories and risk avoidance instead of risk reduction, such as stricter pollution standards by federal and state governments, puts the burdens on indigenous communities to alter their daily practices in order to avoid toxic contamination. Unfortunately, contamination levels are now at the point that there is a need to gauge the risk of continued consumption of traditional foods against the risk of eliminating or limiting these foods from the diet of indigenous users. Many of the contaminants are coming from airborne pollutants as well as runoff from freshwater drainages. However, there are some local and regional sources, especially those related to mineral extraction, particularly heavy metals such as mercury and arsenic, local geology such as mercury and cadmium, and abandoned military sites with produced PCBs, and pesticide use like DDT and toxaphene. While indigenous societies may be considered by some to be peripheral, they themselves are living life as they always have, front and center in their world. Yes, modern times as well as modern problems have seeped into their lives. This is particularly true for the peoples of Point Hope and other northern villages. In Point Hope, there were over 70 deaths from cancers between 1969 and 1993. What they found out was that the federal government, the military branches, buried nuclear waste very near the village and never told anyone it was there. This area is near the ocean, near the source of fresh drinking water for the village, and on grazing grounds of their main food source, caribou. The contamination was immense and was left to spread into the ecosystem and food chain. They further found information that indicates that many contaminated debris and dump sites have been left all along the coastal areas of Alaska after the U.S. military installations were abandoned in recent past. Our government did eventually admit to the cancers and sickness of the people of Point Hope and that it was caused by this waste. This admission does not lessen the betrayal and the dreadful results of globalization on indigenous cultures. As we can see, the indigenous people of the North are indeed feeling as if they are the epicenter of the effects of both climate change and toxic pollution. By all accounts, they are. The Western dominant society has brought with them death, disease, and dramatic changes to the ways of living, traditional living. Changes that have never been experienced previously in remembered history. These impacts touch almost every aspect of life for indigenous people, as well as other life forms that they interact with and depend upon. The U.S. government's response, past and present, to this issue of climate change and pollution causation and effects are inadequate at best and criminal at worst. The issuing of traditional food advisory warnings are just a band-aid on an amputation, especially with the knowledge that the government entities are directly responsible for much of the toxic sickness of both land and peoples. The signs of ruination are in front of us. The indigenous peoples are living the consequences as we speak. All of the earth will join them soon if the men in power do not choose the correct path. The most urgent conservation need is a stabilization and reduction of greenhouse gases at the global scale, so that the climate change can be slowed and limited in intensity worldwide. Continued increases in greenhouse gas production, mostly outside the Arctic, will exacerbate the ongoing disruption of Arctic ecosystem processes. We need to wake up and realize that the Earth is our mother as well as our home. The umbilical cord bonding us to her cannot be severed. When the Earth becomes sick, we become sick, because we are part of her.